Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is the woman who knows how to set personal boundaries, Alex Standy. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Now, you've probably noticed the music is not the same as what we used to have in the past. I kind of alluded yesterday's episode to what's been going on with Facebook and so forth. Basically, I decided I'm not going to use the old theme anymore, even though I paid for the licensing. It's all good. It's all legal. But I'm just so tired of being harassed about it. So I took that electronic keyboard that my brother gave me for Christmas, and I decided to start creating something of my own. So hopefully you like it, but that's the latest creation. It's actually variation number 2. I did variation number 1 yesterday. It was okay, but I wanted to go a little bit further. So there's variation number 2 for you. And Alex is once again joining me here on the show in her purple background. She is the lady in purple at all times. Although, except you're not wearing purple today, but that's okay.
Not today. It's laundry day.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay, I got it. Well, that's all right. Well, you got the purple background, so you got purple. Purple's going on.
Exactly.
So, that's really all that matters, right?
Right.
Yeah. So,
purple is life.
The purple is life. And we have a special guest joining us today. His name is Keith Harrison. And Keith has a rather interesting story to tell. People who are regular listeners know that one of my Friday co-hosts is Neil Positivity, who is a former police officer from Camden, New Jersey. And Keith also is in the same background. And he's going to tell us his story about how that led to certain things going on that he needed to address and how it kind of made some changes in his life. I won't ruin the story. I'll let him tell the story. But first of all, Keith, welcome to the program. Second of all, you and I actually have a connection that's sort of a non-connection connection. I think I mentioned it in the emails, but I have a cousin named Keith Harrison, which is pretty odd. Really strange. I mean, exactly the same name and everything. And I won't go into detail about this, but he has certain things that's going on in his life that is similar to stuff that's going on in your life. I thought, okay, this is just too crazy. This is just too weird. So got to have this guy on the program. Got to find out more about what he's all about. So welcome. How you doing today?
I'm good, Walt and Alex. It truly is an honor to let you guys, have me on your show to spend some time with me and open up conversations of what I'm doing for first responders right across Canada and hopefully into United States, North America, worldwide. That's the goal. So it's always good to have ambitious ones. Having a cousin named Keith Harrison, I feel like, a Doctor Strange multi-universe thing might be happening here. Where I'm Keith Harrison in this universe that you might know, but you have Keith in another universe, and somehow we've crossed over. Get your nerd and geek on there,
Well, that just means we have like a few hours before it all crashes down upon us.
We could have a whole episode of just nerd talk when it comes to.
We sure could.
Totally could. I would love to have all the boxes filled on that one. Can I get up there? Can I get there? Yeah, there it is.
There we go.
I'm just not the talk. I walk it.
All right. Good for you.
So give us the 3-minute biography. Tell us a little bit about Keith Harrison, where you've been and the journey that you're on right now.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So as introduced, I'm Keith Harrison. I am a police officer up here in Canada, in Ontario, in the Greater Toronto area. I have been a police officer for over 16 years, and primarily dedicated to the patrol car, uniform on, attached to the radio, and you're basically at days of mercy to what is going to be dispatched your way. You don't get to really pick and choose. It's really responsive. And you never know what your day is going to be, which at times I was pretty happy because, it's not a cookie cutter. Every day is different. Everything's, new, even though you could be in the same area. And for the bulk of my career, I was stationed in one particular area, which is good because then you can build better community relations and stuff like that. But as a result of, my career in policing and being exposed to more than a few traumas, and a lot of traumatic events. I was not forced, but I was in a position where it was essentially choosing work and myself. And even though a lot of my my lived experience with my PTSD, operational stress injuries, and other anxiety and depression, I did quietly ask to get some help while still working. But then it came to the point where the last day that I was in my patrol car, I don't say this to be very graphic. I say this because this is where I was at that time. And it was me in my patrol car, and I had an FU letter to the world. And that's where they were going to find me, because I was just at the point of complete helplessness of,
Wow,
who else can I tell to get help? Because I feel like I've told everybody. And made it in 2018 is when I went off, made that release to the world of, okay, I'm going off work. If I get insurance claim, if whatever, I'm never going to be a police officer ever again. This is the day I'm going to hang everything up, because I'm choosing to walk away from my patrol car. I'm choosing to walk away from the service because I need to focus on me. And being a father of 3 kids, truly blessed to have my kids, but also blessed in the way that they were some way on my shoulder, talking to me, asking me to come home. Gets tough, asking me to come home, rather than that being the last memory they had of me. And I'm truly grateful that after all this time, I did choose that road, because I know now trauma never really ends. If someone chooses to commit suicide, you're only merely passing that trauma on to others. I'd be passing on to a colleague who would have found me. I would have passed that on to the multiple of unanswered questions that my family would have, close friends of wondering, like, man, I was here. I didn't even know it. But for so long, I had put that mask on of just survival, of being always happy, always being there for other people, because I did not want anyone to know my deepest shames, which was I wasn't happy.
Yeah, well, severely unhappy too. I mean, if you were at that state, you must have been in a really miserable space that you apparently hadn't really acknowledged at that point. I'm wondering, was there a trigger? It almost sounds like this wasn't triggered. It's kind of like you just kind of ran out of rope at one point.
Yeah. Although I do have, and I've worked through a lot of triggers and stuff like that. And that's the one thing I've learned through my lived experience and journey healing with PTSD, is that a lot of times people think it has to be one gunfight or one event. And it's so, I don't want to say common, but it's discovering more that this accumulative stress, this constant buildup of life events. And I can't tell you, Walt and Alex, of why certain calls stuck to me a little bit more than others, because there's been a ton of calls that I've been on, and although very sad, very uncomfortable, they didn't stick with me the way some other calls did. And when, before we get into trauma, we should always talk about therapy and stuff like that. But when I got into getting my therapy and my my learning of not only just how my brain works and how my feelings are, peeling back the onion, a lot has to do with childhood stuff, unhealthy behaviors that we're taught and learned or exposed to early on that we seem to carry with us. And
excuse me,
bless it. I can't. I ask for blessings. I can't give you the full blessing there, Alex. I can only ask for permission. The big guy's got to do it. I can't.
I appreciate it either way.
Can't do it for him. Can't do it for him. But yeah, truly, learning how everything works with trauma is just peeling back the onion, and you're realizing that a lot of things that we were dealt with as a kids, were able to somehow unhealthy cope with our feelings, and then manifest it into other things that are unhealthy as well. So a lot of my was actually going to the school of life when it comes to therapy, because of learning a lot of things that I just was never taught growing up, or never taught in the service, or never taught before getting in to emergency services.
It makes total sense to me. I mean, I have not been a police officer, and I have not done first responder type services, but I think we could all, kind of relate in the sense that at some point in our lives, something has kind of set us off on X, whatever X is. And I'm thinking in particular about one situation that occurred with a former friend of mine, who had this tendency to, most of the time he was sweetness and light. Most of the time he was great to deal with, but every once in a while he'd go off on you. And he went off on you mainly because he had his own stuff and he didn't know how to deal with his own stuff. Well, you do that, you experience that often enough, and it's almost like there's a reservoir inside of you that just keeps filling up with more and more minor traumas. And they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you think you're managing it. That's what I thought. I thought I was managing. I thought it was fine. My wife thought differently, but she's a former therapist, so that makes a whole lot of sense. But I thought that it was all working out okay. But then one day came along where he went off on me again, and I went over the edge on it. All of a sudden, I couldn't handle it anymore. The same kinds of behavior I've been handling literally for years, I couldn't handle anymore. And I couldn't even explain to you why it was different that day. It was no different from the other times he'd gone off on me. But that day, for whatever reason, I reached that limit, and suddenly I couldn't cope anymore.
You were sick of it.
I was sick of it, but I was literally, physically sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the part that was kind of a surprise. I thought I could maintain the balance. I thought I could maintain the control. And when I found that I couldn't, it was a surprise. So that's what I think about when I hear what you're saying, Keith.
Yeah, it's like the death from 1,000 cuts, right? You're not sure which one kind of did the trick, but there's that constant, and really, truly, it comes from, learning it before we're exposed to trauma, learning it. The younger we can learn things like this, I mean, we take finance and the same thing. You can learn about controlling your money better, the better you are for life. But I mean, as far as our emotions and our feelings and our well-being and our mental state, the younger that we can learn this before we're exposed to things, the better off we're going to be. But since I can't vault back in time 20 years before getting into this thing, now that I have been exposed to tools and resources and educating myself through a lot of programs, what can I implement now, right? I didn't plan that 10 years.
That raises an interesting question, though. It raises an interesting question because you said, well, I really can't do anything about what happened in the past. But here's the thought. If there was some way for you to travel back into the past and talk to that younger self, what would you say? I mean, if you had that opportunity, what would you do?
Yeah, and I think we're putting a little cart before the horse, because a lot of what I'm doing now when it comes to peer support and with being so, speaking loudly of my recovery and being there for other first responders is truly being that someone I needed 10 years ago, right? When I looked around a room and I, didn't see that officer or member of the service that really had gone through life trauma events with work and stuff like that, and was in a healthy state. So often in the past, we've seen those people as broken. The broken toy kind of bumper sticker comes up in first responders, and especially in policing, is that you're sent away because if you're a broken toy, then you're somehow, it could be a toxic infection to other first responders or other members of the service. But going back, being that coach officer that I've been to new recruits, I would say if you're not seeing someone for your mental health now, start. And like I said, really employing that prehab. It's so common that if we have sports celebrities and athletes talk about how they condition themselves be best performers when it comes to a sport. They talk about all the prehab that goes in before the game, and really the game is just the game's easy, right? All the practice, everything we put into that game, that's where, we've really put in the effort. The game is just showcasing your talents and your skills for others. And then you go into the rehab afterwards. It really takes us to that saying, like, an ounce of preventative yields a pound of cure. I use that so often because if we were to put in a pound of preventative, how much yield, not only for officers, but the community and the world for anything can become of that, right? I truly feel you're going to have better officers out there who are in a wellness state for themselves, which will then ripple effect to the community, which then will ripple effect amongst the community, and have better relations where you're not exploding over comments or having triggers. And a lot of times for myself, it wasn't so much that incident. It was just I was so full. I was so fed up. I was done with everything that it came out. And it's like, I'm so mad. And I could have this like little thing in my head saying like, why are you taking it on this person? They've done nothing. But it's like, you're spent, you're burnt, you're topped out. And it's coming out and you don't want to come out. And which brings into the whole cycle of negative self-talk, where after that, no one feels more horrible than the person who's exploded, because now I don't need you to tell me how horrible I was. I'm already thinking it because I know what I did was so bad, and now I'm secluded myself in the basement. I have locked myself within the world because I feel I'm unworthy to be around other people because I'm not good. And look, I just showcased it. I'm an asshole. I'm whatever, and I just proved it once again. And yeah,
that definitely is true. We can be really rough on ourselves. I think we're probably rougher on ourselves than we are on anybody else, as a regular rule of thumb, right?
Yeah,
right, Alex? I mean, that's just like and like we've said many times here on the show lately, if we treated our best friend that way, we wouldn't have any friends. Seriously.
Yeah.
That gives us an idea of just how rough we can be on ourselves. The other thought that goes through my mind as you're talking about this is the fact that these explosions of feeling are very similar to, actually they're pretty much the same thing as what they used to call a mental breakdown. And I always think about what my wife tells me about that from a therapeutic point of view. She was a psychotherapist for 10 years. She says, I don't like calling them mental breakdowns. I don't like calling them emotional breakdowns. I said, what do you like to call them? She says, I like calling them emotional breakthroughs. Because what's really happened is that pent up emotion finally came out. It didn't come out the way that was, technically civil, but it came out. It came pouring out. It came out in a way that the whole thing was just pouring all over the place. And because of that part of it, that part made it a healthy experience. The unhealthy part was the bottling up of it all that time. But we think of it the other way around, like all that emotion coming out, well, that's the unhealthy experience. Actually, it's not. Now, certainly it's better to be in a place where you aren't waiting till the last second and then it's all exploding and now all of a sudden you're spewing all this crap over everybody else. That obviously is something we want to avoid. But she convinced me we need to think about it a little bit differently. We need to think about those needs to just get the emotion out in a much more positive way. Because if we want to truly help other people who are in similar situations, they need to know that there's a positive way. They need to know that it's okay to let it out, right? I mean, can you imagine if you had been able to talk to your younger you and said, it's okay to feel that stuff? First of all, I'm not sure if you would have believed it, but if you had believed it, wouldn't it have been great to hear that message?
And believing it is another thing, right? Seeing and believing. But and I think, not only just for myself, but a lot of it is unbeknownst to the public, is a lot of culture that is instilled that needs to be addressed at the institution level. Because even though I had kind of dealt with the calls per se that led me to my traumas, like anything, if you don't feel that there's that support around you, if you're not amongst a group of friends that you feel you're able to talk about that, and then you come out and say something around friends and they kind of laugh and belittle at you, when's the next time you're going to come out and really speak about your feelings or how you're doing, right? So a lot of times was, and I say this all the time, that, there is amazing first responders that go out there every day that just want to make the world better.
Right.
better for everyone else, because so much time as first responders, we're selflessly sacrificing ourselves for others. And it's not just like a hot cup of coffee or skipping your meal breaks. It's time away from your family. It's going out helping other people before you even think about putting that mask on for oxygen for yourself, like the flight attendants tell you to do, right? We're automatically giving that to someone else constantly. So I truly feel that, because I had shown up every day for my organization or my service, for my partners, and I gave them my best, and like so many officers do every single day, I felt a real sense of sanctuary trauma that, the best wasn't given to me. And when I deal with victims of crime, people that are needing help, we always have, information sessions, lectures, guest speakers, pamphlets given us where you're building a Rolodex so that if Walt comes to me in a case of crisis, I'm able to provide you a community resource. And so often, when I talk to people at the community level regarding this, they're like, wow, I have firefighters show up. They give me fire safety tips, and paramedics and police officers and all these people giving me all this information. I would had assumed that if you had this Rolodex for the community, that the service would have 10 times that for you guys, because who's helping the caregivers, right? So that we're not getting to that compassion fatigue. And, there is a lot of great things out there, but we're not having those full, welcoming, open conversations to make it known. If you are struggling, if you're feeling things, it's okay to call that number. It's okay to reach out for help, to see a psychologist, because, no one makes fun of us. I use this. No one makes fun of you go to the dentist, right? No one looks at Walt like, oh, hey, Alex, guess what? Walt went to the dentist the other day. What an idiot. What a loser. The guy had someone floss and brush his teeth because he can't do it himself. Idiot. No one says that, right?
No.
Right.
And we all have benefits. A lot of employment benefits come with dental and health. That's why a lot of people pick jobs, so they have those benefits. But we have benefits for your psychology, like psychologic help, right? A lot of services have it where it's unlimited, or that's capped at a few $1,000s, and it's just sitting there for you to use. Why not use it? Because you're only bettering yourself. You're building that structure in yourself where it's self-care, right? It's for ourselves to make us better, and it's sitting there. Why is it so stigmatized if someone uses that portion of their benefits, right? It's just,
well, it's a great question. Let's see if we can. I mean, I get it. You just said you don't understand, so I'm going to ask you an unfair question. But let's see if we can answer the question. Why is it that people are so resistant, particularly first responders, but anybody who's in a high stress situation where they have access to benefits like that and they don't take advantage? What are some of the reasons that come to your mind?
First off, it's our abilities to not break up with our egos. Our egos at times, when it comes to dealing with things like this, even for myself, like, it's not our friend. Like, an ego is something that I really think people should really, gut check and really destroy before the world will do it, because the world will destroy your ego as quick as they want to, right? You put something online, someone will destroy your ego and stuff like that. Sure. But it's something that is unhealthy for us to really lean upon when it comes to our wellness, because everyone's brain is the same. I like, intelligence-wise, people learning different things, that's completely, but the mechanical structure, makeup of our brain when it comes to fight, flight, or freeze response is the same in everybody. And one thing that I was taught really early on is that, the minute, Keith, you can prove to me through evidence-based that your brain makeup for the fight, flight, or freeze is different than any other brain in the history of humankind, then I will allow you to have this ego that seems to control you at times, where you feel you're unworthy, or this ego that allows you to feel that it's something of your character. So many times in our mind, we feel it's our character. We're a weak person. We're somebody that is not strong as a character when it comes to our mental health. And it's just, that's not the case. It's something that's happened to our brain, and for whatever reason, my brain did not file it correctly, and it's through lots of like emotional trajectory where we operate at a baseline when it comes to our thoughts and our feelings. And every time we have a traumatic event, we need to ride the roller coaster. We need to have the full response of the feelings. And if anything during that, emotional trajectory of our feelings is interrupted, we're not able to then completely scoop everything out, not start up again clean to go back to base. We're now back to operating at a level higher than normal. And if we keep doing that, before we know it, we're at a red line, max 10 plus. And it's because we're in survival, because we have somehow got through this history of not dealing with the emotions or, stuffing it down or, not expressing it when we need to express it. People often, I talk about how I was functioning at a time when I went off, and they're like, how the hell are you surviving? Like, I think this, like, how is it humanly that you were sitting at your heart rate was a resting heart rate was at something of a marathon level? Your body gets used to it. Like, our bodies are so resilient, and it usually takes up the slack for a lot of other things. But before we know it, like, if our bodies are always taking up the slack for other things, before we know it, we're not paying attention to the warning lights that our bodies give us. And my body gave me a lot of things when it came to like just my gut health or so many things that I had automatically checkboxed it being something medical. And whenever I had all these medical tests come back, blood work, all these things, I'm like, something medically is wrong with me. And my doctor, love him, family GD, he was just like, Keith, I have given you every test. What your experience has no medical, physical cause. You need to talk to somebody about, how you're feeling, your mental health, because it's all in your head. It's all in your head. And a lot of times we don't want to hear that. It's not really healthy.
Sure.
Oh, it's all in your head. You're all making this up. And like, I'm not crazy. But there is a straight line with our mental wellness, how it affects our overall wellness with our body.
That's really good. Alex, do I remember correctly? You have a family member who's also a police officer?
I have two.
There's two. Okay.
Yes. My sister and my ex-stepmother, I guess.
Okay. Ex-stepmother. That's an interesting
My sister just quit, and my stepmother is having her retirement party coming up next month.
And I'm curious, particularly with your sister, have you ever had conversations with her along the lines of what we're talking about here? Has she ever shared with you any of the stuff she's gone through in terms of how she's had to deal with things?
Yeah, she's shared some stuff, and she started therapy when she got on board. So she was working through a lot of things, but also the stress of the job and the calls itself was a lot to take on. And it's a lot for anyone. Like, you're seeing kids dying. It's crazy out there. Like, I couldn't imagine. But then there's also like the funny days where she's like, okay, this crackhead got away, and it's like she's like, I don't run, I don't chase people. So it's a mixed bag.
Well, apparently she. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, a lot of times, we're the dark humor kind of kicks in, where it's kind of a coping mechanism that a lot of people don't understand. They're like, that's kind of a twisted way to look at things, but a lot of times it's like, it's how I'm gonna get to kind of dealing with this at times, because with call volumes and whether it be not hiring new officers or officers quitting or retiring and not replenishing the true need for what is required on the road as far as officers, growing populations, we can't do more with less. And a lot of times it's do more with less. And sometimes having these inappropriate dark humor jokes at times is just like, I'm just trying to be surviving here. I'm trying to get to the next call.
Survival at a certain point. It's crazy.
Look, you're dealing with situations and experiences that are far outside of what most people deal with. And that requires some kind of coping mechanism. So that's literally what it is. You said it yourself. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way of coping with stuff that is so dysfunctional. You got to have something to do in order to help get by on it. So yeah, it makes total sense. Definitely see why a police officer would resort to that kind of dark humor. But by the same token, there's another piece to it too. I think this is something we talk about a lot here on the show. Anything that we look at as either good or bad, happy, sad, whatever, we are making a choice how we feel about it. And that's important to me because it took me a long time to learn that one. I was one of those people who for many years thought that what I felt was just based on what happened. If a sad thing happens, then I feel sad. If a happy thing happens, I feel happy, and that's all there is to it. It wasn't until I actually heard you could choose what your response was that, well, my first reaction was, yeah, right. And then my second reaction was, after I was convinced that they may be onto something, my second reaction was, okay, well, I'll give this a shot. I gave it a shot one time and was stunned to find that it worked. Now, since then, I've come to understand, well, yeah, we actually do it a lot more often than we realize. But it does raise an interesting question. And I don't know what the answer would be for somebody who's in a first responder role, because you're facing these kinds of things daily. So I'm just going to ask you, and Keith, you just give me like whatever your instant reaction is on it. But if you had been out, I guess you still do the work. So if you're out in the field and you're encountering a situation that is, by most standards, an unhappy situation, do you ever find yourself trying to find a way to find the silver lining in it?
Huge. Because for myself, what I have learned to do, and a lot of it is that prehab, right? Making it my intentions of the day, because I've gone through healing and stuff like that, doesn't mean that I'm fixed. It's something that I continuously have to be mindful every day of, choosing to be happy or allowing things to hijack me. And, being exposed to, situations at a far greater percentage and pace of the regular population of the community as a first responder, I almost look at my day as energy points. And if I have 100 energy points for the day per se, am I going to allow certain situations to hijack those, and I'm going to misuse happiness or misuse my energy towards something that I might not be able to control? I may not have the answer for. I may not have the best solution per se. It's something that maybe it's not for me to solve, and maybe it's something else's situation that they have to solve themselves. I'm providing them space. But if I go in and, inappropriately or exhaust myself on things, I really have to be mindful that at the end of the day, I may be in a position where I don't sleep well that night. I don't have energy to play catch with my kids or want to spend time with them because I'm so exhausted, because I have basically ran my gas tank dry. And even though I brought this up with, occupational therapists and my doctors and stuff, they still say, Keith, like having that breath, that pause, that moment where between receiving information and reacting, you at least give yourself a second to think. And if you feel like, teeing off on somebody or wasting a few points here and there is justified, it's worthy. It needs to be said because, so often, maybe some people aren't willing to showcase a sense of full honesty. It's not belittling, it's just full honesty of listen, have you ever thought about your situation in this way? And if someone is, withholding that, and, go ahead and do it. Right. But at least you're allowing yourself that pause. And one thing that I do quite a bit is just be mindful every day. Hey, Bobby. Hey, bud, I'm recording. Can you come back in a couple minutes? Soon. These are some people that he's talked to. But give me about 20 minutes, okay, pal? It's a microphone so I can talk. Okay. You want to say hi? You're going to be on the internet.
Sure, we can bring him in. Hi. That was a quick one, hit and run right there.
That's me. Okay. Well, speaking of our early conversation, okay, Cooper, I need some time. Thank you. Our earlier geek session when we talked about our comics and stuff like that, it's surprising he's not dressed up as Spider-Man right now. Because he's not doing that. He's dressed as a first responder. He has amazing. He's 7. He's fantastic. Where he has that imagination level of a child.
Yeah, that's a wonderful age.
He's your cosplayer. I like it.
Yeah,
I love it. That's great. I love what you're talking about too, because what you're talking about is, well, obviously it's very important, but it kind of gives everybody a glimpse into what goes into the mind of somebody who has hit the wall, still doing the work and finding ways to continue to be able to do the work. That's basically what you're showing us when you're talking about these things. So tell us a little bit more about. Give us like a little bit of a lay of the land in terms of how do you do your mindset every day.
So things. It's almost like a great bookend, right? It's not just my morning routine. It's what I'm doing at nighttime to set myself up in a place that I can better myself in the morning, right? So a lot of it for my morning routine, getting ready, is to make sure that I'm disconnecting from electronics, social media before bedtime. One thing I always do, and is I journal. We write our stuff down, and one thing I do at nighttime is just to kind of write a little bit about my day. Usually only about 5 minutes. A lot of gratitude goes into that, but at the same time, I still, Cooper, Bubby, you can't read out loud. No, you got to read to yourself.
You need to take a minute. You can take a minute. We'll chat for a moment if you need to.
Yeah. Let me. I don't know if I can. Pause myself here. Or,
that's fine.
I don't know how this
This is how life becomes part of the show, right? I mean, this is standard procedure, right? I can't tell you how many times we've been photobombed by one of the kids of a guest or a co-host. I mean, it's wonderful. I love it. Because it gives you a chance to see what the real person is, right? You see them in context.
That's true.
Yeah. And the context tells you a lot. I mean, right there, we could just see from the way Keith was interacting with his son. First of all, you can just tell how much love there is in him.
Oh, the joy in his face, yes.
Yeah, it's so obvious. It's so clear. So you get that real 3-dimensional sense of him that you don't necessarily get from the interview part.
Right, that's true.
Right? And then you add in the fact that because you have that new context, you think about his stuff that he's talking about differently.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that's what
and it all comes into play because it's like when he was sitting there talking about the letter to the world and how his children were sitting on his shoulder, and now you put a face to the name, and it's like it's a whole different story now.
Especially when he's wearing a Spider-Man outfit, but yeah.
Right.
Okay, so Keith is back.
Hey.
We were just celebrating, by the way. We were celebrating actually experiencing your interaction with your son, and I was mentioning to the audience, we got the chance to actually see and hear how much love there is in your voice when you're talking to him. That gives context. I mean, it's one thing to hear your story, but to hear the context of who you are, and then now to continue to hear the story, all of a sudden that gives a 3-dimensionality to your story that we didn't have before. So even though that might have been an interruption, I want to thank you for it. That was great.
Well, it kind of helps when cameras are recording. Sometimes I kid. But no, like it's something that, obviously it wasn't very taught well to me. It's something I learned, that a behavior that I wasn't growing up with, that I've taught now, that even though I've been through a lot of stuff, like I don't want to do that to my kids. I don't want to do that.
Right. And break the cycle.
If he chooses to enter the world of first responder, whatever capacity it may be, whether it be the military or any other services, I want to make sure that what I'm doing now is creating real change so that he doesn't have to deal with what I went through, because I don't want anyone to go through this. I wouldn't really want my worst enemy to be exposed and deal with what I've dealt with. God forbid, my own blood, my own kid, right? Like, just would never want him to be exposed to this. And so often, people, talk negatively about the services that, why would you ever want to son to be a police officer? We get yelled at all day, or why would you want to serve out there? There's so much good that goes in more that comes out from being a first responder than it is bad, even though, we deal with bad things. It can be a place where you can see a lot of good, and it just makes the bad stuff that you encounter, I don't want to say it's never worth it, but you just enjoy those moments a little bit more.
Sure.
Being exposed to those good things. I'm thankful that through a lot of routine that I do now, I'm not so hyper focused on threats. Every time I go out where I'm missing the interaction of having happiness and joy around me so many times. And I'm gonna support my local baseball team here, the Blue Jays. Love them, but it usually took like a 9th inning, bottom bases loaded, 2-out walk-off home run to get me to a point where I felt, okay, I can feel happy. Like this, it took so much to get me to the point where I can actually feel happy, because I was suppressing everything. Like, I didn't want to feel pain. I didn't want to feel sad. I just switched everything off. And what people don't realize, there isn't a scientific button that has been created or discovered yet where, I turn off, sad and pain, but yet I still feel joy. You're hitting that button in your head, and you're turning everything off. So I'm really, fortunate and I'm blessed that I'm able to have moments like that and be present in them, because for so often I wasn't present, and the whole, gift of life is to be present every day. But kind of circling back to things that I do. So like I said, I do a lot of journaling. And one thing that I do with my journaling at nighttime is I have a small space carved out for me to recognize, or at least identify things I didn't do that as well as I wanted it to be. To allow it that space so that I can just be mindful that, okay, when that comes up tomorrow, I did this way, and, it wasn't my best, but I'm not kicking myself. I'm not, harping and really creating that cycle of violence in my head when it comes to negative talk. I'm just allowing myself the opportunity to feel it, identify it. So when I wake up in the morning, and I like to get up usually before my kids, I find my days start a lot better when I'm up before my kids, because I'm more in a place of taking time for myself. So where I do some morning journaling, breathing, like to get out and get the sun on me as quick as I can. That way I feel my body is fueled to a place where if we're always reacting to things, I'm able to react to the day by putting some stuff in for me first before I'm doing for others. And I think over the time, we've really missed the opportunity to utilize this in training early on, because so much training for first responders is muscle memory. You hear it all the time. Like, I've reverted back to my training, muscle memory. And a lot of times I've done things reactively, not knowing, because I've ingrained it so many times in my memory, I'm already doing it. If we're putting that pound of preventative in our training, and putting that muscle memory training of, okay, these are healthy things to do every day of your daily habits, things that you're doing so often that you're not even thinking anymore. It's, it's muscle memory. It's a built-in healthy habit. You've put in boundaries where you're going to be like, okay, this is my absolute. If someone crosses this to me, then that's a no. And it's not that I'm being disrespectful to you. I'm just being respectful to myself. That I'm not I'm not going to be walked on. I'm not going to be walked over. I'm not going to be disrespected to a level of myself where I'm going to deplete myself for somebody else when it's an absolute no-go. And it's, something that we need to be taught early on, before you're getting into at the collegiate level if you're having specialized programs where, becoming a police officer or becoming a firefighter or a paramedic before you're getting on the job, you're instilling these at that checkpoint, that early onset. Like I said, should be doing it in our schools when we're talking, about our finances in school, but we should be talking about our wellness so that, we're aware of that as kids, because a lot of times as we get older, we're dealing with childhood stuff that we never dealt with. And if we're able to deal with it at a childhood level and we don't really understand things, and really as adults, we don't understand sometimes how things are working. If we're just being exposed to that sort of training early on, you understand how your brain works, you understand how things are. So when things do happen, it's not if trauma is going to happen for first responders, when trauma is going to happen, I'm able to put in this.
Yeah, that's valuable. No doubt about that. I love the fact that you were doing the journaling too. We've talked a lot about journaling. For years, I really wasn't a fan of it. I've become more appreciative of it over time. And I've had many guests telling me about the virtues of it from a lot of different perspectives. And you were making reference to how your journaling. I mean, you didn't say it specifically this way, but I could tell you were alluding to the fact that the journaling helps you to process, to deal with the various traumas you encounter every day. But I'm also curious, do you take advantage of the journaling to credit yourself for the things that you did well or that went well, so that you can get that side of it too?
Yeah, and I go through that, and I tend to a bit of gratitude. I think it's far out from that attitude of gratitude. It's not something that people always talk about, but people don't really understand and do. It's just how blessed we are truly if we can look at our cup being half full rather than being half empty. And a lot of times with trauma and whatnot, we're always looking at the negatives. We're always looking at the negative. We're always looking at the negative, like how much weight, how much just unhappy comes out of us. And then what we're doing is we're then manifesting unhealthiness to the world. And then what are we attracting? Exactly. We're attracting unhealthy things. But if we're in a place of half full and we're expressing gratitude and we're energy, our bodies are water and energy. We can go on to a whole topic about how I feel our bodies are not just water, but just magnetic energy of human, that if we're casting good out to the world, good's not only good is going to come to us. Good things happen. Those people are good, but so often, Alex, that if you're in a good time, if you're happy, you're not really hanging around unhappy people, right? If you're in a state of being joyful, well, I don't know, that guy looks too happy. I want to be around that. The negative usually deals with itself, right? And then you only have space for happy and joy. You only going to have time to have good things around you because good wants to be around good. And the more we can take time in ourselves to really be appreciative of the everydays that we have that are good, we are then now embodying that good and then putting that out to the world. And only then, like you have this podcast, 1,700 shows, like all these amazing people. Well, then you're attracting all that amazingness to your life. And when that happens, you're now in a place. Okay, now you're building that small tribe, that tier, hence the name, that you want in your life, so that you have that to go to refill your cup or to be there to help you in times to live happy.
Oh, no doubt. In fact, I continue to be both impressed and amazed by my own experience, in the sense that I have done a lot of work on myself for sure. But like you said in the podcast, I've had so many influences that have influenced me for the better, that I find myself having been reprogrammed in ways that I wasn't actually directly reprogramming. The experience reprogrammed me. The experience of encountering and engaging in and discussing about and just exploring all the different ways I could, the lessons that other people had learned, the positive stories they'd experienced, the traumas they'd gone through and how they came out the other side, all that stuff has reprogrammed me over time. And it's kind of a shock, really, when you look back. I mean, when you're in the middle of it, you don't really notice it, right? It's like one day it's just like the next one, and you're just doing your usual thing. But you look back over and you say, wow, I actually went quite a ways that I didn't even know I went.
Yeah. And, you're right on point there when it comes to just how much we learn and grow And if we're able to keep ourselves in a state where we're not a know-it-all, right?
Yeah.
I don't have my full puzzle in my life yet. I say that with aspirations and enjoy, not yet, because we have to be mindful to keep ourselves open, that we're never going to be 1000 or 100% complete. We're always learning to be better. Anyone who is at any sort of high functioning level of sports or in the business or whatever, they're never satisfied to the point, because they're always looking to be better for others or be better for themselves, or always creating new goals and challenges for themselves. And if we open ourselves to not thinking that we know it all, and have it where, you know, I come across Alex in my life or Walt in my life, and that you might hold a piece of my puzzle, right? That is going to help me along my way. So many people that I've been a part of, that are continuing to be a part of my life, I would not have known that piece or that of myself through growth had it not been for them. And if I'm able to open myself up to a point where I'm allowing the possibility for others to be a part of my life in a way that I've yet to know or feel that they're to be a part of my life, it allows us to be more open. And if we're more open, we can be more understanding. And I feel if we just, you know, are in a state where we're open to have healthy conversations, healthy dialogue, we're able to exchange information so much better, where it's a benefit rather than a debate. And it's okay to debate at times, not to shy away from debates, but as long as respect is done. And I think so often, especially coming out of being isolated for so long, re-entering the world per se with our conversation in our worlds, I mean, having that 5 seconds of kindness at times where you're just giving yourself a breath to give somebody else a breath, so that like someone's struggling with something, someone's dealing with something unbeknownst to you every day. And if we're able just to kind of like pause for a second to give each other some space, some gratitude, some kindness, chances are you could enter possibly a really great conversation, and hell, may even make a friend.
Well, plus you never know what that piece is going to be. You made allusion to that piece, right? Yeah, we get these pieces, but when you're, first of all, when you receive the piece, you say, "Oh, wait a minute, what's that?" And
where does this go?
Yeah, where does it go? Yeah, I know it fits in somewhere. I haven't quite figured that out. Oh, we're still doing the conversation.
Corners figured out. We're in a corner.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Get the edges done.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle, but it's also a jigsaw puzzle that we're filling in while we're doing the rest of life.
Yeah, but I think it's so important also just to be mindful that you never know who's going to give you that piece, right? So not to just shortchange or just dismiss somebody who could be there for the right intentions, for the right purpose to help you, and you're shortcutting them, but you're shortcutting yourself, right? Because you're now missing out on that, and who knows if it's going to come around again, right? It's all a process.
Well, I could also make the point too. I mean, I get your point. I think it's a valid point, but there's also the flip side that you could say, well, stuff does keep coming around. It keeps coming around, and it keeps coming around, and it comes around a little bit stronger the next time, and stronger the next time, until you finally notice it. Because if you don't, it's going to come at you with the 2x4 at some point.
Right. Yeah. We're gonna have that Chris Farley stage. I don't so much feel here or here, but right about here, here, I feel that pain. It's like, no, nothing there. Nothing there. Gotta get my Chris Farley references in. Great.
Right.
But yeah, no, like, and but that's the thing too. Like, I alluded back in the past where so many times I had what I thought were medical issues. So like my gut. We all know our gut is a direct line to our mental health. And if we take care of our gut health, our overall mental health, will kick in. And so many times, like I had all these stomach issues, like, oh my God, I have ulcers. Do I have Crohn's? Am I celiac, with my diet? Like, what do I need to cut out or implement better? And a lot of times I was just spent on that spinning wheel. And really it was like, your gut is telling you you're not healthy overall. So yes, make the changes to implement, good diet, good regimen of exercise, a wellness state. And that usually leads to, once we take care of that self-care and some people, like, even when the self-care comes up, they just think like it's all about spas and nails and stuff like that. And it really isn't. It's going out for walks. It's going to exercise, going to the barber, having a clean shave if you're clean shaven, or getting your hair cut. Or we all know stepping out of the barber or the hair salon sometimes is just, you look good, feel good, right? Like, it's just,
it's a whole experience, period.
It's like, no, but like, you're like, I have barber therapy with my doc, with my barber, right? But there's so many other things that we're doing day to day that people come out and like, oh, I never do self-care. Self-care is stupid. Well, did you eat really well today? Did you hydrate yourself? Did you go for a walk? Did you get out and get sunlight? Did you get proper sleep last night? Did you take time to educate yourself? Did you read a book? Did you go work out? Did you take time just to reflect, maybe yoga or meditate or breathe? Like, these are all things that we're doing that are self-care, that are for ourselves. Did you shower today? Did you clean yourself? Like, some of that stuff sometimes is, just getting out of the dirty clothing and putting yourself into a shower. That's self-care. Like, you're taking yourself time for yourself in so many different ways that people are doing. And if we're just more mindful of it, and implementing things that will make us better rather than make us worse.
And it's really important too, because you talked about how you kept looking for the medical issue. You kept looking for the medical cause. And for you, you could never narrow down a medical cause. It was all going on in the head. I'd actually take that a step further. I would say that everything starts in the head, including real medical issues. And really, the whole thing is just driven by our mindset. So probably the most important thing we can do from a health perspective is adjusting mindset. Because when you do that, everything else starts to line up. I like to talk about something that my sister-in-law once told me. Here, she was a co-host for a while here on the program. She was pursuing, at that time, she ended up with a PhD in statistics, but she was pursuing at that point, she thought a PhD in the neurosciences. And she was telling me about all the different kinds of testing they can do. They can hook us up in the lab, and they can test for everything going from the top of the head down to the bottom of the feet, and they can test everything in between. They said they could actually now get to the point where if they really wanted to, they could wire you up completely, and they could trace from the moment that you have a thought through all of the different systems of the body down to a place in the body where there was some sort of a disease or there was an injury or something like that. And they could actually see healing going on if you start off with a positive thought, and they could see death going on in that area if you had a negative thought. They could actually trace that. And when I think about that, I say, wow, if that's really true, and I think it is true, then really everything does start in the mind. So instead of looking outside for causes, the first place we should be looking at what's going on inside our heads, what's going on inside our hearts as well.
You're right. And I mean, so many times people have, cancer diagnosis or medical diagnosis that, give them a set time, like this is all you have. And then like 10 years later, they're still going because they put themselves in a place where it's not going to beat me. It's not going to beat me. And at a medical level, people are like, I just don't know. I just don't know how this is even possible. It's a medical mystery. It's a medical miracle. And it's really that mindset of, living happy, living longer rather than, living unhealthy in your mindset, because that's just going to make you feel older. It's going to make you not want to move. It's going to make you not want to be in a place of overall health if we're not in that right mental state. So yeah, bang on. 100% would agree with that.
Well, we're nearing the end here. I hear a 7-year-old who's looking for some attention, so we'll have to cut it short here pretty quick.
We're going to go on the bike. Just give me a couple minutes, okay? I'm ending up right now, okay?
Right now?
Yeah. No. Let me say my goodbyes, and then I'll get going, okay?
So speaking of goodbyes, before we say goodbye, we got to find out more about how does somebody reach out to find out more about Keith Harrison?
Yeah, so I feel like we've been talking so much about the wellness and stuff like that, which is awesome. Everyone, Cooper, there
he is. Hello.
But things that I've chosen to do in my return to work is, essentially be that person that I needed 10 years ago, and I created an apparel company. With the focus is to open up the healthy conversation around mental health for first responders. And then with the apparel sales, donate portions of that to help trauma programs and services. So I work closely with Wounded Warriors Canada, which again is an organization that I benefited from through trauma programs. So if you're wanting to reach out to tierresponseapparelcompany.com, that's the website. It's up. Hamsteak. But also on social media. So we're on Instagram at TR_Apparel Facebook, TR Apparel Company, and then we're on Twitter, Apparel TR. But for the most part, we're just the website and Instagram, and it showcases, the work that I'm truly trying to do as far as inspiring other first responders to make the identification themselves, to be mindful of their mental health, and as well as organizations and services that I'm working with that have the programs that are available for first responders. You don't need to be uniform. It's for civilian, and it goes into a lot of the good that I'm trying to be for the community of first responders, so that we don't have to think of suicide. We're going to reduce 22 to 0. Stats show that through emergency service in the military, 22 suicides are every day. And if we can get that to 0, that's the goal. Because I truly believe, and I didn't know how valuable I was to the people around me, to this world, of how much how important I was, and that I needed, as much as my brain was telling me otherwise.
That's fabulous. We'll make sure we'll include the link to the tierresponseapparel.com as well in the show notes, so people will be able to find it that way. But Keith, thank you so much for taking time with us and telling us your story, and best of luck in continuing your work. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, trying to help other people who are in the same position you were in.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, and like I said, we have the apparel there, and it's one of the brands that I'm quite happy and proud about is. One second, buddy. If I can't hear them, I don't know what to say. Okay, but is the Warrior brand that I have with Tier Response, and I feel anyone that is showing up every day for themselves, battling a mental health or an operational stress injury. It has a warrior in them that they're battling, and it should be seen as a sign of strength rather than a weakness. And also implementing the semicolon in the apparel for mental health, because if people don't know and realize the semicolon and how powerful that is amongst the mental health community, but as well as how powerful we can make it for ourselves to be mindful every day to insert our semicolons amongst our day-to-day, to do what we need to do, so that we are showing up for ourselves, taking care of ourselves, and not, again, ending our life or our stories in suicide, because that, again, is never something where trauma ends. It only gets passed on to somebody else, and we need to be able to deal with the traumas rather than just passing it to somebody else.
Wonderful. Thank you. This is great. We love what you're doing. Thank you so much, and keep doing the good work. And Alex, as usual, it's been wonderful talking with you. Thanks for sharing your story about your sister. That was really great. Really appreciate that as much. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, buddy.
Bye-bye.